Good afternoon, folks. Mike Cromwell and Dave Gilbert with the UCBuyer. And we're pleased today to have Cristantos Haji, Chief Product Evangelist, founder of Prodoscore, and a guy that I've known for a number of years in the business, widely reviewed as one of the industry's leading thought leaders and always on the cutting edge of what's going on with technology. And we're having Cristantos on today because he spent last week at Google Next, where they launched what the three of us believe is going to be pretty damn disruptive to the cloud communications business. And that is that Google's making the dive into voice. So Cristantos, welcome. And love for the audience to might take a couple minutes and give us a background on Cristantos and your take on what happened last week at Google Next.
I just want to correct my wife would kill me, but she's the founder of Prodoscore, so I always got to give her that credit. So
absolutely, man.
That's true.
I got to give her that credit, or she'll kill me.
Skip Denise, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it was your post on LinkedIn that really gripped me, Cristantos, because you started talking about the changes that were all over Google Next. But the one that is the most amazing is that Google has decided to really jump into this voice space, maybe to give Microsoft a run for it. But you know how Google has a tendency to wreck really good business models and make things free. So, oh my gosh, are we headed in that direction? And then in addition to that, just some of the cool technology that Google has that is far and above the best when it comes to integration with the GCP, the Google Cloud Platform, now known as Anthos. So I'm excited to hear you talk a little bit about that and just see where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and first off, thank you guys and congrats on everything that you guys are doing. I think it's really beneficial for the industry, obviously communications. And I think, Mike, when we first met, it's like the industry 5 years ago when we first saw it, like, hosted voice and everybody was just selling the hosted voice. Now, like, the industry's completely morphed. It's like changed, and now we're going in a whole different direction, and it's exciting to see. And you guys are legends in this space. So everybody knows you and everybody knows that hat, Dave. So it's,
yeah, I walk around without a hat. Nobody knows who I am. It's part of my body, I think.
I know. Where's the hat? Just look for the hat. So going back to, and again, I would love for you guys to tell me this and argue with me because you guys are, going to be on the opposite side. But like when I see Google Voice, what I see is a product in its infancy, right? And, the UC industry as a whole, it's very mature, right? Very well established, all the players, you name it, 8x8, Ring, Vonage, everybody. So everybody's there, right? And very well established, very well entrenched, and you can tell everybody's going up market, right? So all these providers, they're all going up market, trying to, move away from these commodity replacements like Grasshopper, things like what GoDaddy's doing, these little, one-offs. And what I see with Google, what Google did that is probably better than, you guys know this better than anybody, is that the provisioning process and the setup process is the killer, right? That's where people just, it's like Dane Bramage, they just, it's just painful. And I think what Google Voice did, and again, it's very infant, right? So you're going to have a lot of these large customers. They have so many complexities and all. Google Voice is not this. Where I see Google Voice going to play, especially for at least the next 12 to 18 months, and I'm not to say that they're not going to have some big wins, right? But the micro-SMB, anything below 20, I think they're going to kill it. I think they're going to maybe even lessen, right?
Well, let me ask you this though: that Google Voice has been doing that for years. Nothing really new about that.
But it wasn't productized like it is now. Like now it's part of a business suite. Like it's part of that G Suite for Business license, right? And what's really exciting about that is now these G Suite partners, and Dave, you know this better than anybody. Those G Suite partners can't sell voice to save their life. Like all they know how to do is sell G Suite, and voice is complex, right? Especially as you start going up that market, you start running into network issues, QoS issues. You start running into, just all these complexities that Google Voice, that team doesn't have the skill sets to deal with those types of issues. Like they're looking for, hey, I'm going to give you a number. Here's a mobile. And the best part, like I was about to say, the best thing that Google did is they did that provisioning piece. Like you can provision 500 users with the DID and auto provision right from within that G Suite admin panel, like with the quickness.
Yeah, and you were telling me that the porting process is so smooth. It's like porting in the cellular world. And that's the thing that just killed us back when I was running Simple Signal. It was the ports that never went right. And they took forever, weeks to line up. So now
you have to coordinate all that. And again, I see where it's at. It's in the panel and you can provision, right? Now, what actually is happening on the back end is a mystery, right? But it looks simple from a provisioning, right? Somebody's AT&T, CenturyLink, somebody's still getting that request. And that process is not, there's no way they can automate that process, so they still got to wait for them to release those numbers. And again, you guys know better than anybody, like what happens. And you need somebody coordinating those efforts, right? Because nobody wants to change over their phone number and then all of a sudden their existing phone system doesn't work. I mean, it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
So here's what's interesting to me, because I always like to look at when I'm evaluating new platforms, and I'll put the caveat out there. I have not seen the demo that you got to see, Cristantos, so I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on this. But I always, whenever I'm playing around with new systems, new platforms, I like to look at it from the lens of a consumer. And what I always look for is ease of use. How's the user interface? Is it intuitive? Is it easy to follow? And if you're a small business and you want to look at moving over your phone system to G Suite, is it self-provisioning? Can you set up and build your call flows easily? Because as a G Suite user myself for my business, I'm stunned at how easy a lot of the applications are to set up. And if the same type of approach applies to setting up your phone system for a small business, I agree. They are in a unique position to just absolutely crush the micro SMB and SMB segment, who's looking for simplicity, ease of use. Many of these companies, smaller businesses, don't have an IT person on staff. So if they figured out how to make it easy, I think they're in a position to be very disruptive.
No, and you know this. Remember when Ring Central started out, they started in the they started off really small, right? Yep. Very small space, Vonage 2, everybody was in that small space, and then everybody started realizing, oh my God, all the money's in the bigger, more complex deals. And I always use this analogy when I first met Dave Gilbert, is he told me, I tried to get him to move off of Salesforce, right? I was trying to get him to move off some other CRM to move, to save money. And Dave told me, he's like, I can't. He's like, it would cause me too much pain. He's like, everything is integrated into my Salesforce. And that's where the future for service providers are, right? Is moving up market, adding value, adding that custom integration, either with text messaging platforms or, call logging, obviously like what we did with gUnify, with Simple Signal, like that part. But then here comes a different type of complexity, right? And this is what I was telling Dave. Right. The problem is you move up market, your sale, and Mike, you know this better than anybody. All of a sudden now you're asking telco guys to become solution sellers and to sell business outcomes. And what happens now, you're moving up market, these sales guys are not cheap. So if you really want good sales guys, now all of a sudden, instead of paying a $75,000 a year sales guy, now you're paying $150,000, $200,000 sales guy. And then you need better quality sales engineers. You need better service deployment engineers. So all of a sudden going up market for a lot of these service providers, it's not going to be easy, and this is where it makes sense for people to get rid of their BroadWorks instance, get rid of that engineering cost, and move to something like a BroadWorks cloud, right? Because you got to eliminate all those costs, those network engineering costs, all those infrastructure costs, and you're going to have to focus and push it back to the sales and marketing team in order to survive in today's market. Mike, you know this, you were the sales leader, right? Yeah. Today, it's not about product. It's not about engineering, who's got the best product, right? It has nothing to do with that. Today's market is all about who's got the best sales and marketing team, period. There's a lot of great.
And when we say define best, right? And what's the impact of the client? The best to me today in terms of sales talent is able to help the client make the connection between challenges, business problems they're trying to solve. They're trying to innovate. They're trying to ultimately drive to outcomes. And can the salesperson make the connection from outcome, intended outcome, leveraging the technology to solve a business problem that leads to that outcome with financial predictability? And if
okay, so we're talking about outcomes and solutions, which is so key to holding churn down for the reasons we just heard from Cristantos. But really what it comes down to is integrations with APIs. It's an API world. And when you put all these APIs together, you create a business solution. And when that happens, that company's not going to go anywhere.
100%.
The challenge is now that we got Google in it, who has such power when it comes to the APIs.
Right.
I wonder if that's the whole thing we should be afraid of in terms of service providers.
So here's the thing, but again, go back to the original thing that I just said, right? There are so many companies out there that have phenomenal technology, Dave, phenomenal, amazing APIs, all this, everything you need to run a business. But at the end of the day, people still buy solutions from people. They buy it from the people they trust. They buy it from this. And a lot of these big companies, they don't have good salespeople because, and this is where I believe the future is the channel, right? Because if a salesperson is really good, do you think he's going to work for a company? No way. He's going to go work for himself, right? And the problem with the channel is probably about 10% of them, this is my guess, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, 10% of them are actually able to sell a solution. The rest of them sell dial tone. Right? They're not, whatever, network, sell, dial tone. So this is where I see the future because, and again, the downside of working with the channel is you're going to erode all your profits, right? Because you're going to have to pay those guys ongoing. Because remember, they only get paid unless they sell.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you had a sales guy, you pay him one time.
Right.
So pick your poison. What do you want to do?
Well, here's the interesting thing. This is something we discussed ad nauseum last week. My view on it is the channel is here to stay. It's exploding, and the reason for that is because it's the fracturing of the old traditional model where an IT buyer would typically buy from a small number of vendors. Now you're going to go to various providers for the best in class solution. So you're going to go to one company for your UCaaS, another company for contact center, another company for SD-WAN, security, data center, et cetera, right?
Right.
Well, decision maker in the IT environment does not want to work with 15 different suppliers if they can work with one trusted advisor who's going to manage all those solutions. So that's in my humble opinion why the channel's exploding. And on the flip side, you've got the channel, I think, has matured greatly. So I think while the number used to be 10%, as you say, Cristantos, that number I think is going up big time. I think it's now, I would say 25% of the community, I feel really confident, has the business acumen, technical acumen to do the right kind of, to design the right solution. I think that's part because they've stepped up their game. Part of it being that a lot of former national account sales reps at the big companies are now in the channel. So here's the thing. I want to get back to the Google conversation because here's the fascinating thing I see, and I want to get your take on this, Cristantos, is that 5-10 years ago when we were all launching service providers, the SMB segment was the first mover to adopt UC. So all the UC companies, Simple Signal, my company, Vonage, all focused on SMB. Well, what's happened over the last few years is all those companies have continued to move up market. RingCentral's now up market. 8x8's up market. Vonage is up market. Everybody's moving up market. And guess what? The SMB's been left behind. And here comes Google launching Google Voice. And guess what? My opinion is they're going to clean up in the SMB because it's a neglected segment. But by spend, it's the highest percentage spend out there in UC today.
No, and
It's low-lying fruit as well, because I mean, selling an enterprise is a long sales cycle. And so as that enterprise gets bigger, it becomes more difficult to sell into, and it takes a higher level of skill to sell that successfully as well. So yeah, if that's all going to go to Google, oh my gosh, that changes everything for the channel partner too.
Well, when you think about a sequence of events, right? So first off, Cristantos, I want to get your take on, are you seeing the world the same way relative to their ability to really clean house in the SMB segment?
I see that Google over the next 24 months, for sure, hands down, especially with their customer base, they're going to kill that 1 to 10 user space. Like they're going to eat it up, because they're providing. So Google is going to provide that basic functionality, and you guys know this better than anybody. We sell these solutions, nobody uses them, right? Like 80% of the features. And I remember Dave Michaels, he once told me about, I think it was Cisco or somebody. He told me, he's like, we build all these functionality, nobody's using it. Right. Like people need a DID. They need a mobile app, and Polycom is now integrated with Google Voice. And the question becomes: are people even going to use those desk phones, or are they going to use a Chromebook?
Well, that's an interesting. What's your take on that?
I mean, I talked to one Google partner, and I was trying to get them to sell Polycom handphones with their Google Voice solution. They said, "Why would I sell a Polycom handset? I could just sell them a Chromebook. They can use the Google Chromebook for everything, and then they have the mobile app on their mobile phone." And then here's the other thing with those mobile apps, nobody even opens those, right? The problem is adoption, and I know Google's going to have the same problem. I am 100% almost certain that mobile app that's on the cell phone, especially the iPhone, even if it's a Google Voice business app, like I have it on my phone, I don't even open it. And
well, I'll tell you, on that note, what's interesting is, to your point, we were my last company, we were the global leader. Which was astounding to me. 65% of the seats that my company sold, we sold the full instant message presence, the mobile phone app on the phone, for tied into the PBX, and 65% of the seats had that, which was the leader amongst all broadside providers. They're kind of gold standards with 25%. But if you look at the 65% that bought it, only 20% actually used it.
You're right. It's even less. It's actually less. It's about, I think it's like 15% of actual customers are actually using that mobile app across the board. It's not just once. It's almost all of them, because people are naturally just using their iPhone for everything. So the question then becomes, how do you get people to open that mobile app? That's the question. So like we're talking about all these things, like we can sell Google Voice, you can sell Ring, you can sell Vonage, you can sell 8x8, you can sell Salesforce, Sugar, you can sell G Suite 365, but I promise you this, people barely use any of those business tools.
And why do you think that is? I got a theory that if you make it easier, they use it. But part of that also is education and awareness. And it's like anytime you try to change habits, right? You got to condition yourself to it.
So this is the great question. I mean, here's my theory, and Dave knows where I stand on this, right? So here's my theory: is as humans, we were trained for almost 13 years from our childhood that if we wanted to get an A, we had to do this, 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 and this. If we wanted to get a B, you get this, 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 and this, right? But then when we get into the workspace, that whole dynamic changes, right? You're either measured on revenue or you're measured on whatever, right? But the question then becomes, a small percentage. Mike, you're the perfect guy, sales leader, right? You were running that whole sales team for that one service provider. The question becomes, okay, I know these top 20% or 10% of my guys are hitting their revenue numbers, but then the question becomes, what about that 90, 80%? What are they doing all day? And this is what we don't know. Right? We don't know what they're doing, because they're obviously the revenue numbers aren't coming in, right? So if the revenue numbers don't come in, you got to figure, you can't just fire them. Like you just spent 6 months onboarding them. Are you going to throw that investment away? I mean, is that what you're going to do? Are you going to try to figure out, hey, what do these guys do? And the way you get to change behavior is you score them. My belief is if you're not using your Vonage mobile app, or if you're not using your Salesforce, or you're not using your G Suite, you're not getting credit in my eyes.
Right.
So if you want to get credit, I need you to use the business tools I gave you as a company, because and then here.
Yep. No, keep going.
I mean, and here's the other thing. We keep talking about machine learning and AI.
Right.
We will never realize the benefits of machine learning and AI from a communication standpoint if they're not using the business phone system.
Right.
Right.
Well, here's what's fascinating. You just triggered a thought, because if I apply driving user adoption of the technology that we sell to driving change in behavior in sales, the way you do it in the sales environment is, step one is, does a person whose behavior you're trying to change understand the value, understand the direction, which ties back to training. And then it's always the what's in it for me. Is what I'm doing going to translate to value for me? And then the other is in the sales environment, it's like, if you're trying to train folks on selling a new product, new technology, what's the value to the client? How's it going to make your life better? How's it going to make the life better for the client? How are you going to close more deals? And, the same things probably apply to driving user adoption. So it's, if you're in a business and you want to get your employees using technology, how's that going to make their jobs better? How are they going to support customers better? How are they going to be more productive, right? And if they align those to business outcomes, maybe that's the answer.
And that's where we have to. It's not about selling a phone system, and this is the problem with all three of the industries, from the G Suite resellers to the Salesforce consultants to the hosted PBX channel partners. They're just selling their individual products, and they promise all this productivity, but nobody can actually quantify, like, how am I going to get this productivity? It's not till you put it all together and you make it all work as one that you can really then see the value of productivity.
Right. So let's talk about Prodoscore for a minute, because what Prodoscore enables clients to do in that environment is, because it's integrated with the Google stack, you can actually score employees and actually rate their level of engagement and participation, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically what we do is, if you look at G Suite, so there's email, calendar, chat, and docs, right? So those are the four core products. And then you got Salesforce, which is like leads, opportunities, contacts, and whatever. And again, you're a sales guy. And then you got your mobile, right? So you got communications, UC. And my focus is that UC app, right? From a sales perspective, right? So they're using that business outcome. And when I aggregate all those data points, I weight each function and I compare all the salespeople to each other. And then I can see an 80, a 70. Because, I mean, think about it, Mike. We're in a data overload period. There's just too much damn data, right?
I'm with you on that.
And I don't need more data. Just tell me, is this guy working or is he not working? And then I want to know if this guy who's not working, and I know he's not hitting the revenue, right? Because I can see it. Like, everybody knows who's got revenue. But the question is, what is he doing all day?
Right.
Or she, what are they doing? That's what we don't know. And that's when you put it all together. Like, you might have a sales guy who just needs some, like, coaching. Like, so instead of just firing him, maybe he just doesn't understand and he's too afraid to tell you. But you don't have that data.
That's what it is. A high percentage of the time is and the way I tell folks is in the past is, the reason you want to log your stats is that if you want to look yourself in the eye and be the best you can be, track your stats for yourself. Because at the end of the day, everybody's heard sales is a art and a science. So the science side tells you that sales is a numbers game. The more calls you make, the more appointments you're going to get. The more appointments you get, the more proposals you're going to do. And the more proposals you do and the presentations you do, the more deals you close.
So Mike, how did you do that when you were running your sales team? How many salespeople did you have when you were running your sales team?
When I was at XO, it was about 500 or so. And
you used to have people log their activity into like a spreadsheet or something?
Hopefully not a spreadsheet, but it was a CRM. And, I've never been the style who's a micromanager. So I want to track the key KPIs like appointments, proposals. But the beauty of today's technology is, if you're using, let's say, Prodoscore, and the salespeople are using the tools. So they're using the unified communication, they're using the chat, they're using the CRM, They're using click to dial out of the CRM to make their calls more productive. The fact of the matter is, if you're a sales professional today, use the sales technology, use the tools that are available, because it's going to make you that much more productive. It's going to reduce cycles spent on BS. And if you profess yourself to be a sales professional, then you're going to use the tools. And if I've got the data that Prodoscore provides, then that's valuable information for me as a sales coach to work with somebody, because I can literally look at sales stats and tell whether somebody needs work on scheduling appointments, having the right conversation at early stage of the sales process. The data will tell me that. And if you look hard enough, and I think to your point earlier, data overload, 100% agree. What I want to look for is correlation of the data for something that I can use in a meaningful way to help my sales organization perform better. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
And I can even tell, just based on all that data, like I can tell when somebody's about to quit. Like I can see the
100%.
drop off in activity. Like I can visually see it. And here's the thing, there's so much data, and here's the other part, and I'll get off my soapbox, but this is what I really believe. Like everyone talks about machine learning, AI, Google's really big on all this. At the end of the day, we got a bunch of it, and going back to sales, we got a bunch of machine learning AI guys who are so intelligent and so smart. Yep. They are building products not for business people. They're building products that no one's ever going to use because they don't understand business. They're engineers, and what they might think is cool might not make sense to that VP of sales who, dude, I don't need all this data. Just give me something simple. It's overwhelming. Like, I don't even want to take a training class. Don't give me nothing. Just sit me down. If I can't understand your product within the first 3 seconds, don't give it to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that complexity is where people get lost, because even though these features are really cool to an engineer, let's say, it may just be a level of complexity that nobody wants to go through. Look, most people don't want to drill. They want a hole, right? So it's like we're overkilling them. And so it's the result that they're after. It's the culmination of a few things put together that creates a solution that we can all live with. And one of those things is like a Prodoscore, because it gathers so much information that can be dealt with from the salesperson and the sales manager as they converse about how that person can be more productive or what they're lacking that's hurting them in their sales. Because they're being measured.
But you got to have the right. You got to have all the business tools. So you got to be using your hosted voice system. You got to use your CRM. You got to use your G Suite or whatever. And like you got to be using the business tools, or we can never ever say we can actually truly measure productivity if the employees are not using these business tools.
Yeah. The other thing though that is exciting is that this is a new era for communications. It's not just about picking up the phone and making a call. It's about integration. It's about pulling it all together to really have it mean something in the business process that's going to make everybody more effective who uses that kind of thing.
But think about this, machine learning and AI, where I think the biggest opportunity that nobody's talking about, and this is where we all come from. Think about for the past 30 years, all of everything happens in communications, phone calls, and all of that data has been lost. It's just stuck inside a switch somewhere, right? That's not easy to get to, right? Or it's in a call recording format that's not easy to get to.
Yeah.
But now we can actually leverage that voice data, and imagine how much data is hidden in our conversations.
Right.
That is, I tell you, I think you're spot on that, because that is where, we've seen, probably where I see machine learning and artificial intelligence most use is so far in a cloud contact center. And you look at what that's able to do in terms of delivering a better experience to clients and being able to basically predict outcomes based on even voice attenuation, voice on certain keywords that come up. Now imagine taking that same technology and applying it to a sales conversation, because the seller is using the technology, and you've now got machine learning to basically be able to coach salespeople, coach service people that are not restricted to a contact center, but on their mobile device. That's where it gets really cool to me. Is that where you're heading with that, Cristantos?
Yeah, and that's what I see is like we
Yeah.
you know, and again, it's like you got to pull. But here's the other thing, you have to know who you're selling to. And when companies now, when you look at a lot of these sales and marketing strategies that I see a lot of service providers doing, it's a very broad. Oh, I sell to healthcare, or I sell to IT companies, or I sell to banks, right? Like, forget about that. We got to sell to the user type. Like, I am selling to sales. I don't care if you're sales in healthcare, sales in this, but I am selling to the sales guy, or I'm selling to HR, or I'm selling to the CFOs. Forget about what vertical it is. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I know that all the salespeople, and then like if I'm selling to an inside sales team, that's where a contact center type solution comes into play. But all this vertical strategy stuff is nonsense, right? It's about the buyer. Who is the buyer?
Yeah. And where I think the vertical I agree with you. And the only caveat I'll add in that is that where the vertical makes a lot of sense to me is that for the seller who is in a vertical, once you're in a vertical, verticals have unique problems they're trying to solve, unique applications they use. And if you can prove a use case, a solution for a company in a vertical, you can take that exact same set of solutions to another similar type of company who's trying to solve a similar type of problem.
And you're right. But I mean, again, that you're 100% right, and I agree with you on that. But what I see is that at the end of the day, the sales leader only has one job, and that's to drive revenue. And he has to hire salespeople, and 80% of them suck, right? And we all know that, right? Small percentage will actually perform. I mean, why do we got to get more complicated than that? Like every business who's in business, unless you're a nonprofit, we got to sell.
Right. Amen. Sales makes the world go round.
Okay. So let's think about how we're going to land this plane for our viewers. So how would we wrap up today's discussion?
So I think Google Voice, going back to our original topic point, Google Voice, right? I think it's in its infancy, okay? I think it still has a long way to go. I think they've done a phenomenal job on the provisioning process, which a lot of service providers have not. And remember, Google has all the data from the email, so it's very easy for them to provision. There's a lot of key functionality that, as you go up market, it's just not there. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to salespeople.
Right.
And you have to know the customer. And it doesn't matter who has what technology. People buy from people, and they buy from people they trust, right? And that's why I really believe that the channel is where it's at, but only a small percentage of them, and I'm just working my way backwards, right? It's not about the technology. So even though Google has phenomenal technology, amazing, but I guarantee you 80% of the business population doesn't even know that any of this stuff exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So final question, and then Dave might have a final question for you, but final question, I'll start it off. Also, I'll ask the question, I'll answer it, and then I'm curious to get you guys' take. So we talked about what this is going to do to disrupt and make an impact on the SMB. Where do you see Google playing, let's say 24 to 36 months down the road? Here's my view on that. I think the first step, number one for Google Voice is take share in a big way in the next 18 to 24 months in the SMB, Micro-SMB segment. And then just like everybody else has done, they'll move up market. I mean, who would ever thought that Google would be getting into fiber, that would become the preeminent platform for video, and you go on and on and on. I think if Google sets their mind at being a business and plant their stake in the ground, they will own it. And so I think what happens is starts with SMB, and I think they either build out the capabilities to take it up market, or they go acquire somebody that gives them that capability. But I think we all know what the size of the market is. It's epic, and we all know what's happening with user interface and customer experience and the integration of those things. And I think this is a big first step. And I expect that in 24 to 48 months, I think Google is one of the biggest players in the space in all market segments.
I agree.
It's going to create chaos. because it's going to mean that today's the service providers are going to need to know how to survive, right? So they're going to be moving around trying to figure out how they can catch up to the giant Google, I believe. I think they're going to come in and disrupt the space. So you're going to have some of the biggest taking their games up. And with that comes the channel partners. They have to take their game up and really understand all that technology that maybe they didn't want to have to sell. Create solutions rather than just selling a phone system. And then so as a result of that, I think it gets actually way better, and way better for the consumer, way better for the UC buyer. So that's where I think we can step in and keep people informed and do what we can to make it work, let's say.
Right.
Cristantos,
What were your thoughts?
The last thing I will say is this, and this is where Google has a really unfair advantage. Another last one is that they own a lot, and going back to what Mike just said about having them the best video, right? If Google can deliver video at an epic scale, they're going to deliver voice like it's nothing. And the call quality is going to be, for lack of a better word, epic, right? And it's going to be hard to compete with that call quality, right? You know, because they have that massive network. So that's going to be a challenge. And again, going back to what everybody's, thinking about is like, this is where we got to up our game, right?
Yep.
We got to up our game, and we got to sell on value. We cannot be a commodity seller. Like, we can't sell on price. If you sell on price, you're dead.
Agreed. So Dave's got the final question, Cristantos. I want to thank you for being on today. Great conversation.
Dude, this is awesome. I'm so proud of you guys on this. This is really cool. I mean, this is awesome. If you guys do this kind of
stuff. We took the dive, man. We've been talking about doing this, Cristantos, for like 2.5 years, and we finally just decided, hey, we got to make the dive, man.
It's time. It's time. The buyer needs representation at the UCbuyer. We're doing that. So thank you for being with us, Cristantos. Very informative and some really good stuff here. So
I'm glad you got all this stuff on tape. This is great. This is great.
We'll do it again as things
progress.
You guys,
we'll
awesome. Revisit this with you.
All right. Thank you guys. This is awesome. Great job. Congrats.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.